Hey there, new IDs. In the last episode, I helped you craft your instructional design philosophy. Did you do it? Well, I would love to see if you did. You can actually email a video or audio file of yourself reciting it, and I'll take a look. I'd love to see what some of you came up with. Don't be shy. The whole point of this is to share it with people, right? So send your elevator pitch, ID, philosophy, whatever you decide to call it, to thenewhereshow@gmail.com. Welcome back to I'm New Here, a podcast for new instructional designers and e-learning developers. New episodes are uploaded every Monday. If you have a question you want answered on the show, send an email to thenewhereshow@gmail.com. This week, I'm going to talk about the instructional design job search and how to prepare for interviews, including how to leverage your network and other connections. These tips are based on conversations I've had with people who hire instructional designers and from interviewing for design positions myself. Now, I know that interviewing for a job is not on a list of favorite things to do for most people. And speaking for myself, the only way I can handle it without becoming a jumble of nerves is to find that sweet spot between not preparing at all and too much preparation. And trust me, there is definitely such a thing as being too prepared for an interview. You end up sounding rehearsed, and the relatability you need to connect with your interviewer might totally disappear. But doing enough prep to have you feeling confident about your skills and your level of knowledge about the company is going to be crucial. So today, I'm going to share 3 tips for nailing your ID interview. But first, let's chat briefly about networking and getting past that pesky ATS or applicant tracking system. First, you are not getting interviews for a couple of reasons. You aren't applying to jobs that align with your resume. You're only applying online, and you're not leveraging your network. Okay, that was actually 3 reasons. But that's what folks like career coach John Marty and Tim Salau, Mr. Future of Work, believe at least. And I'm inclined to believe them. I've seen proof of this. I've touched on this before in other episodes, but I want to remind you that you have to do more than spray your resumes into the ether and hope for the best. You need to be strategic and intentional about how you apply for jobs. This includes finding companies you want to work for specifically, not just random job descriptions, connecting with people who work at those companies via LinkedIn, and creating relationships based on what they share online or what you're sharing. Now, you can still apply using the ATS, but instead of relying solely on an ATS compliant resume to carry you through to an interview, you can rely on the strength of who you are personally. Now, if you want an in-depth discussion on how to leverage your network, I'll drop some resources in my show notes. And if you want to stick to the old comfortable ways, I'm sure that works every once in a while. But what if you tried it another way and the process became much less tedious than it is now? Now, once you've established some relationships with people in or in proximity to the company you want to work for, you can let them know that you're interested in a specific position and land that interview. Okay, now for those tips I promised you. Number 1, craft your pitch. Now, this is easy if you did your homework from last episode. Craft an elevator pitch that describes who you are, what you do, and why you do it. And that includes what you believe about instructional design. Has an interviewer ever asked you to tell them about yourself, and you end up caught off guard, and then you launch into this long 5-minute story about growing up in West Philadelphia, born and raised on a playground is where you spend most of your days. And then you quietly trail off, hoping they butt in at some point and tell you that that's enough info. Well, that's no way to kick off an interview, and it doesn't actually paint a picture of who you are or how you fit into the role. Also, it's boring. You're not the Fresh Prince. So use the method from last week to create a tight narrative that sells you to the interviewer. Tip number 2, use the STAR method to give concrete examples of your work. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So don't try to do this off the top of your head or you may ramble. Think about potential interview questions around your design style, interpersonal skills, and work habits. Remember that whether you're asked behavior or technical interview questions, the STAR method helps set up signposts for the interviewer. Now, this is still something even I'm practicing and trying to rein in. It's a skill you'll want to continually work on too. But no need to write out a complete script. Just use STAR as a framework for your responses in your interview. Tip number 3, quantify your experiences. Now, interviewers hear lots of tall tales about the wonderful things we all did at our last jobs, how we revolutionized learning at a large organization by creating transformative learning experiences, or how we were responsible for effectively managing a team of 6 and turning around a struggling L&D department. But it's all for naught if you don't have the numbers to back it up, especially when you're trying to break into a very large company who may rely on KPIs and specific business metrics to justify everything they do. Keep track of your accomplishments quantitatively as well as qualitatively. Don't just regurgitate the responsibilities section of your job description. Were you able to reduce costs by 10% by converting Flash-based courses to HTML5 in-house rather than sending it out to an outside agency? Then make sure you make that point in the interview. That's how you quantify what you've accomplished. So those are my 3 tips, but don't just listen to me. I'm not all-knowing, and because I realized that, I went ahead and crowdsourced some tips from around the digital L&D community too. So here's a few that really stood out to me. The first one was, when submitting a test project, take a risk. So by test project, we mean that your interviewer may ask you to submit something based on a scenario they come up with. So this is no time to play it safe. This person says they've done test projects that drew on their background in comedy improv, that were story-based and grew out of popular culture, and that they were highly interactive. It's a great way to see what your potential employer thinks about creativity and about your skills that maybe they couldn't see just in a resume. Next, ask how they work with their stakeholders to incorporate new ways of working or getting work done. Can give you some insight into how much creative freedom you'll have. So this is a good point. Remember to ask questions yourself in the interview because you're trying to figure out if that company works for you just as much as they are trying to figure out if you can work with the company. Next, this person says they found most of their jobs by giving presentations at conferences and actively participating in professional groups. So they'd recommend a combination of working hard to excel, networking, and taking an active role in being your own advocate. So like I was saying earlier, really building relationships around your skills and the skills of people you admire may sound superficial on the surface to people, but really what we want is to build real connections so that people can vouch for you and sponsor you when your dream job comes up. And last but not least, the comment that I thought was most poignant is that you should remember to have fun. As you enter the door for your interview, tell yourself to have fun. You're ready as you'll ever be. So relax, get ready to meet new friends, and seek to help them as if you were their consultant. And that takes us back to what I said in the beginning about finding your preparation sweet spot. Don't study so hard for an interview that you psych yourself out. Walk in relaxed and confident about your skills. And I know it's easier said than done. But when you know who you are professionally, it won't even matter if you get that specific job or not, or to at least help soften the blow if you don't get it, because you know that you did your best no matter what, that you're good at what you do, and that the final result has little to no bearing on your skills as an instructional designer. I got a few more tips from the community, but I don't have time to share them all here. You can check them out in the show notes or head on over to my Twitter account at NylaLXD to find the thread. Now on to resources. There's so much information out there about applying for jobs in general and applying for ID jobs specifically. And I know it can get overwhelming, but being strategic about your job search is going to make the time you spend on it worthwhile. Here are some resources to help you get started. First, the TLDC cast has a multi-part job seeker series for the L&D community, hosted by Joseph Suarez. Check out the replay of his series where he talks about the interview process. I think it'll be really helpful for people transitioning into a new career or those who haven't interviewed in a very long time. In addition to prepping for the instructional design part of an interview, you need to remember to brush up on the different interview structures, like how to prep for a behavioral interview or a phone interview, what types of questions to ask a recruiter versus a hiring manager, etc. Check out my show notes for more links about hacking the job search. And for the love of everything, promise me you will not continue to blindly apply to jobs online and then walk away and just wish for the best. Be strategic. Trust me, the results will prove me right and get you the job that you want. This week's homework assignment is to identify 3 women of color to follow in L&D. Now, I want to talk to you for a second about tokenism. It's the practice of making only a symbolic effort to be inclusive to members of minority groups, especially by recruiting a small number of people from underrepresented groups in order to give the appearance of racial or gender equality within a workforce. Now, you may have heard, I felt like a token, or so-and-so is a token, and that's because people think hiring one Black person, one person in the LGBTQIA community, is enough to fill a quote-unquote quota. There are more than just 2 or 3 of us out there in the community. It's not that there aren't Black or LGBTQIA people in the L&D community. Your circle, your echo chamber just hasn't expanded to include them. So I want you to make a deliberate effort to find more than one woman of color to follow in L&D. All right, y'all, we did it. We got to the end of episode 9. I gave you a quick rundown of how to apply for jobs and hack that tricky applicant tracking system, or ATS. Then I shared specific tips on how to nail your interview. I also shared some tips I crowdsourced from the broader L&D community. Thanks for listening to I'm New Here. If you like the show and want to know more, check out nylalxd.com/I'm New Here. I have show notes for you there, links to everything I talked about in this episode and more. If you're a regular listener and you're digging what I do here, leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. I would so appreciate it. And let me know if you're still liking the micro episode format. I'm also all over socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as NylaLXD, and I'm on LinkedIn too. Just search my name. I'll see you next week.